My name is Evelyn Reed. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a senior archivist for the city's Historical Society. The last time I saw my childhood home, it was an empty shell, echoing with the ghosts of forgotten laughter and the hollow ring of my parents' betrayal. I stood in the middle of the living room, a space that had once held our Christmas tree and countless family dinners, now stripped bare. My entire life, everything I owned, was piled into exactly 7 black industrial-strength garbage bags near the front door. 7 bags. That's all they deemed worthy of me. My mother, Brenda, stood by the open front door, clutching her purse, her face a mask of weary resignation. "It's a foreclosure, Evelyn," she'd said, her voice flat, not meeting my eyes. "There's nothing left. We have to go." My father, Robert, was already in the car, the engine idling, ready to speed away from the wreckage they'd created. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach, a familiar ache of disappointment, but this time, it was laced with a chilling suspicion. They drove off, leaving me standing there, surrounded by my meager belongings, the house key heavy and useless in my palm. They thought I'd just accept it, just like I always had. They had no idea that their carefully constructed lie was about to unravel, piece by agonizing piece, revealing a truth far more calculated and cruel than a simple financial disaster. To understand why I didn't immediately shatter into a million pieces, you need to know a little about my parents. Robert and Brenda Reed had always lived on the edge of their means, and often, beyond it. My father was a perpetual entrepreneur, always chasing the next big idea, a chain of artisanal coffee shops that never opened, a revolutionary app that never launched, a consulting business that never consulted. My mother, a stay-at-home parent, enabled his every whim, believing in his vision even as the bills piled up. From a young age, I learned to be self-sufficient, to save every penny from my part-time jobs, and to never rely on them for anything substantial. Our house, a charming but aging craftsman in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, felt like the one constant, the one anchor in their turbulent financial seas. It was the place I always returned to, even after college, when I found a small apartment but still kept a room there, a sanctuary from my demanding job. Over the years, there had been countless emergencies. A car repair that cleaned out their savings, a medical bill not covered by insurance, a sudden business opportunity that required seed money. I'd chipped in when I could, sometimes reluctantly, always with the understanding that this was a temporary setback. They were my parents, after all. I loved them. They had always painted themselves as victims of circumstance, unlucky but well-meaning. The idea of foreclosure, while devastating, fit their narrative perfectly. It was just another unfortunate thing that happened to them. But as I stood there that afternoon, the late summer sun casting long shadows through the empty windows, something felt off. My parents had always been dramatic, but this was different. The speed, the lack of warning, the utter finality of it all. They had given me less than 24 hours notice that the house was gone, that I needed to collect my things. They said the bank was seizing it that day. No boxes, no thoughtful packing, just grab what you can, Evelyn. The 7 garbage bags contained my most sentimental items, photo albums, a box of old letters, my grandmother's antique locket, a few favorite books, and some clothes I'd been meaning to take to my apartment. They hadn't even given me time to get my old desk or the small collection of vinyl records I'd stored in the attic. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to make sense of it. I called them, but their new phone numbers went straight to voicemail. Eventually, my mother texted back, saying they were settling in and would call when they could. Settling in where? They wouldn't say. They claimed they were staying with a distant relative out of state, needing time to process. My father's texts were even more vague, full of platitudes about starting fresh and not looking back. I was effectively homeless, at least from my childhood home, and they seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving me to pick up the pieces. My job at the Historical Society, meticulously cataloging old documents and preserving delicate artifacts, had trained me to notice anomalies, to connect disparate pieces of information. The story of their foreclosure had too many holes. Why the sudden rush? Why no official notices? Banks usually give ample warning. I decided to start with the most basic public record: the property itself. I drove back to the house a week later. A sold sign, not a foreclosure sign, was staked firmly in the front yard. A real estate agent's name and number were prominently displayed. My stomach churned. This was a significant detail. Foreclosures are public records, but a private sale is a different beast entirely. I took a photo of the sign, then drove to the county recorder's office during my lunch break. My experience with public records requests for historical documents made the process relatively straightforward. I filled out the forms, paid the small fee, and requested the deed transfer history for the address. What I didn't understand yet was just how deep the deception went. A few days later, the documents arrived. The house hadn't been foreclosed upon. It had been sold. And not just sold, but sold for a substantial profit. The closing date was nearly 3 months before they told me it was being seized. They had been living in the house, knowing it was sold, collecting the proceeds, and planning their exit, all while maintaining the charade. The buyers were a young couple, and the transaction was clean, no bank repossession in sight. The money they claimed they didn't have for emergencies had been sitting in their account for months. My hands trembled as I read the dates, the amounts. My parents had sold the house for $680,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage, they would have walked away with a significant sum, easily over $200,000. More than enough to buy a new, smaller place, or at the very least, help their only daughter get on her feet. Instead, they had packed my life into garbage bags and abandoned me. That detail mattered later. I tried calling them again, my voice tight with barely suppressed rage. My mother finally picked up. "Evelyn. What a surprise. We were just about to call you." Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. I cut her off. "Mom, I have the county records. The house wasn't foreclosed. You sold it 3 months ago." There was a beat of silence, a sudden, sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then, a rush of words, a desperate scramble for an explanation. "Evelyn, honey, it's complicated. We had to sell. The bank was breathing down our necks, threatening foreclosure. We just barely managed to sell it before they took it. We didn't want to worry you." It was a clumsy, transparent lie. A foreclosure threat doesn't negate a private sale for profit. It was a partial truth twisted into a full deception. "And you didn't think to tell me? To help me find a place? You left me with 7 garbage bags, Mom. 7. And you just vanished." My voice was rising, cracking with the pain and anger I'd held back for weeks. "We needed a fresh start, Evelyn. A clean break. We couldn't afford to help you. We barely had enough for ourselves. We're starting over, from scratch." This was my father, Robert, now on the line, his voice booming with the familiar indignant tone he used when cornered. "Don't you understand? We've sacrificed everything." I understood. I understood that their sacrifice meant sacrificing me. I understood that their fresh start was built on a foundation of lies and abandonment. I hung up the phone. I didn't want to hear another word. I needed to think. The next few weeks were a blur of anger and planning. I realized this wasn't just about the money, or the house. It was about their fundamental disregard for me, their willingness to exploit my trust. My work at the Historical Society had taught me the importance of documentation, of building an irrefutable case. I wasn't going to let this go. I found an affordable apartment, a small place of my own, and slowly started rebuilding my life, but the wound festered. I decided to gather more evidence. I checked public records for property purchases in other states. It took some digging, but my skills paid off. I found it, a small, newly purchased condo in Arizona, bought outright, no mortgage. The names on the deed were Robert and Brenda Reed. The purchase date? Less than a month after they sold our family home. They hadn't been starting over from scratch with a distant relative. They had been enjoying their new, mortgage-free life, purchased with the proceeds from the house they'd told me they'd lost to foreclosure. I also remembered something else. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had left me a small inheritance when I turned 25. It was meant for a down payment on a house, something my parents knew about. They had always subtly hinted that family comes first and that money could be pooled for a common goal. I had kept it separate, in an investment account, but the thought of it made me sick. Had they been eyeing that too? I decided to confront them one last time, face to face. Not to beg for money, but to present the undeniable truth and to sever the tie. My cousin, Sarah, who lived in Arizona, had mentioned my parents were visiting. I knew it was a lie, but it gave me an opening. I called Sarah and explained a condensed version of what happened, omitting the financial details but emphasizing their sudden disappearance. Sarah, always the most grounded of our extended family, was shocked and offered tea. Oh help! She arranged a family dinner at her place, inviting my parents, pretending it was a casual get-together. I flew to Arizona 2 weeks later. The air was dry and hot, a stark contrast to the damp greenery of Oregon. When I walked into Sarah's house, my parents were already there, looking relaxed and tanned. My mother's smile faltered when she saw me, her eyes darting nervously to my father. Robert, ever the blusterer, recovered quickly. Evelyn. What a wonderful surprise. We were just talking about you. I didn't return his smile. I sat down at the dining table, where Sarah had laid out a simple meal. I pulled a manila folder from my bag and placed it on the table. The folder, thick with documents, felt heavy, weighted with years of their deceit. My parents exchanged a worried glance. Mom, Dad, I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. I came here because I need to understand why you lied to me. Why you told me the house was foreclosed when you sold it 3 months before you left me with garbage bags on the curb. My mother started to protest. Evelyn, we explained. I held up a hand. No, you didn't. You said you barely had enough for yourselves. But I have the deed for this condo. I pushed a copy of the Arizona property record across the table. Purchased outright. Less than a month after you sold the house in Portland for $680,000. My father's face went pale. He snatched the document, his eyes scanning it rapidly. Sarah, sitting next to me, gasped softly. You left me with nothing, I continued, my voice gaining strength, while you bought yourselves a new life. You pretended to be victims of circumstance, but you were just selfish. My mother burst into tears, a familiar tactic. How could you, Evelyn? How could you accuse us? We're your parents. We did what we had to do. What you had to do was abandon your daughter. I asked, my voice cutting through her sobs. What you had to do was lie to me, knowing I'd be scrambling for a place to live. My father slammed his hand on the table, rattling the plates. Enough, Evelyn. You have no right. We worked hard for that money. It was ours. It was our home, Dad, I corrected him. And you used a lie to escape responsibility, to disappear, and to leave me behind. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for an apology, because I know I won't get a sincere one. I'm here to tell you that this is it. This is the end of me cleaning up your messes, of me believing your stories, of me being your emergency fund. I stood up, pushing my chair back. Sarah reached out and squeezed my hand. My parents, for once, were speechless, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and a flicker of something that looked like shame. The house in Portland, I said, looking from my mother to my father, was supposed to be a symbol of stability. Instead, it became the symbol of your betrayal. You can live your new life here, in this new condo, but you'll do it without me. I walked out of Sarah's dining room, leaving my parents to stare at the documents on the table. Sarah followed me out, her face a mixture of sadness and fierce support. I never expected an apology, or a check, or even an admission of guilt. What I got was the truth, laid bare, and the freedom that came with it. I booked an earlier flight home. The house, the actual physical structure, had been sold to a young couple eager to start their own life. But the idea of home, for me, was no longer tied to a building or to the people who had abandoned me. It was something I would build for myself, carefully, honestly, one brick at a time, far away from the garbage bags of their lies.